feeling it. And I want to give you a persuasion technique that is about this one hoax that I think is the one that will unlock, basically unlock the door, or to mix my metaphors, the dam will break. And I think it's the drinking bleach hoax. Now, two things about that are interesting. It's the only double rupar that I know of. Now, a rupar edit of a video, it's named after Aaron Rupar. A rupar edit is when you take part of a video out and somehow that reverses its meaning. That's how the Fine People hoax was done, how the overfeeding koi fish was done, how the Covington kids hoax was done, and then the drinking bleach hoax. But the drinking bleach hoax has an extra element that makes it sticky. It's a double rupar. It removes the end of it, but also the beginning. And if you don't remove both, then people can still see the context. But if you remove just one of them, it still works. So people will say, no, Scott, let me show you the full quote to show you that you're wrong. And then they won't show me the full quote. They'll show me a half rupar, like one of the things deleted, which still keeps the wrong meaning, or at least it's ambiguous that way. But if you see the book ends it with light, then he was talking about light the whole time. Okay? So here's what I want you to do if you get into a personal conversation over the holidays with somebody who believes the drinking bleach hoax. Are you ready? This is a way to unprogram them. And I tweeted it, but you can use any version of this for yourself. So if somebody says that Trump suggested drinking bleach, get them for a moment, get their full attention, make sure there are no distractions, right? Because you don't want them to use the distraction to run away from the conversation. Make sure you have their full attention, and then say this. I just want to check with you on your thinking process here. Do you believe that an adult human being with a college education who ran a real estate empire and rose to the presidency of the United States, that person believes that injecting a chemical disinfectant into a human body would be a good idea, such a good idea that he would say it in public? Is that what you believe? Now watch what happens when your subject starts squirming. I don't believe anybody will look at you and say, yup, that's what I believe. I think just asking the question that way, though, and then if they do say that, just repeat yourself. Say, okay, I may have heard you wrong, but it's your actual opinion that a real human being who can function in the world and run a big company, run for president and win, that a human being with that level of education and knowledge about the world actually, literally, really suggested in public to inject a chemical disinfectant into a person. Do you really believe that? Watch what happens. Watch what happens. You're going to shake them to the core because they don't believe that. Then, suppose they say, but Scott, he said it. You just can't talk him out of it. Maybe you don't have access to the transcript. So you're going to say, okay, the president, then here's the backup. Wait for this. You're going to love this next part. You're going to love this next part. Say to him, now, do you believe that when the president used the word disinfectant, he was using it in a medical, scientific sense? Or do you think he was using it in more of a, let's say, a layperson sense, that a disinfectant would be something that gets rid of an infection? Would you accept that the word disinfectant often is used for a chemical disinfectant, but that if you were just using it casually, you would imagine that anything that gets rid of an infection would be a disinfectant? And in fact, they were talking about light in that context as one of, but not the only one, but one of the disinfectants. So, do you believe that the president thought there was something you could inject into the body that would get rid of an infection? Do you see where I'm going yet? And then your person will say, ha, 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 There's nothing you can inject. There's nothing you can inject into a body that's going to get rid of a virus. Have you heard of Regeneron? Have you heard of vaccinations? Now, vaccinations might be a little different, but Regeneron is the number one most effective thing. It is injected into the body, and it gets rid of infections. What would be another word for removing infection? Deleting an infection. If you were to get rid of an infection, what would be one word that would capture that? Disinfectant, maybe. Now, certainly if you were a layperson, would you call something that's a chemical that gets rid of an infection, would you call that a disinfectant? Well, if you're a doctor, probably not. You'd call it Regeneron. You'd call it monoclonal antibody. But if you're a layperson, could you imagine that there would be something that you could inject into the body that would disinfect it? Yes, it's the number one thing we use in the United States and around the world to disinfect people who have COVID. It's just not the way that the doctors talk about it. Now, why did Trump say he was being sarcastic? I can't read his mind, but what would you do in that situation? And this is the way to answer the question. How would you handle it? What are the alternatives? Well, I'll tell you one of the alternatives is to say, it's something that I thought I saw somewhere, but I can't remember. How's that sound? Well, why did you bring up drinking bleach, would say the news. He never did that, of course. But they say, why did you bring up drinking bleach? Just because you heard it somewhere? Like, where did you hear it? Do you think he remembered where he heard it? Here's the background. At about that time, I was tweeting about a specific trial in which they were using a ventilator-like device to put UV light into a human patient. And they were considering extending it into the lungs. Why bring it up at all if he's president? Because he was talking about the possibilities in an optimistic way. If you haven't noticed, the president's an optimist. So when he was in there, he was saying, hey, maybe this would work, maybe this would work. He was going through things that might make it work. Remember, that's what he does. He says that directly. He's a cheerleader for the country. He's an optimist. So that's why he brought it up. That's his job, to be optimistic about the direction of the country, when it makes sense, right? So here's what I think happened. Now, this is a hypothesis, but it's a strong one. Just prior to the time when he was on stage talking about that, there was some tweets going around that I tweeted personally and mentioned a number of times on my live stream, which is this test where they were injecting UV light into the trachea and then potentially thinking maybe it could work in the lungs itself. And I tweeted that. Now, I do know, because I've heard from a number of sources, that the White House would watch this live stream fairly regularly, as in pretty much every day. And they also follow me on Twitter, which I know because I watch who retweets me, etc. Now, I know the White House staff knew about this study of injecting UV light into a patient. I know it because they follow me, and I mentioned it, 5 times. So certainly staff saw it. Do you think that Trump wanted to tell people it was something he saw on a cartoonist's Twitter account? Go. That could have been his only alternative. If he wanted to tell you the truth, he would have said, I don't remember where I saw it, which doesn't sound good. Or maybe I saw it on a tweet, which doesn't sound good. Or maybe I heard it from a cartoonist, which doesn't sound good. What was he supposed to do? Trying to just make it go away as a joke, that wasn't a bad idea. It just didn't work. He didn't have any good choices. If he had been up to date on it, and he could refer you to the study offhand, then maybe that would have been a good play. But do you think he could have mentioned the name of the hospital and the name of the technology and where it was being trialed? Do you think he could have just popped that out of his head? No. Even I can't, and I've tweeted it. I forget the name of the technology myself. I've tweeted it like 50 times.